Hello friends, welcome to another video in Happy Lantern Rite. As we all know, with this festival, you will have the option to choose one of the Leetry characters for free. This video is not meant to give any recommendation on this matter, however, I'll be sharing a special build for Xingqiu which you can obtain from the selector. It took me a very long time to farm out the artifacts, but believe me, it is so worth it. You won't believe how much damage he will be outputting. At the end of the video, I'll give you a detailed instruction on this build and how you can also make this work for your team. Without further ado, here is the build. You must be curious how this build performs, so let's compare the damage difference between Lion's Roar to Sacrificial Sword, which is widely regarded as Xingqiu's best in-slot weapon. For the test, I won't be using Bennett's Burst because Xingqiu's Rain Sword is dynamic and does not snapshot, meaning if you switch him off Bennett's field, he will lose the attack buff. And since in the majority of team compositions, you won't actually keep Xingqiu on the field, we'll keep it realistic and not use Bennett's Burst. The only buff I'll be using is Raiden Shogun's elemental skill because Lion's Roar requires the enemy to either be infused with Pyro or Electro. Alright, Sacrificial Sword goes first.
Let me try my blade.
Illusion shattered! Odds revealed by... Witness the power of Guhua! Time to act. No, my sword!
Now let us swap the weapon to Lion's Roar and compare the results.
Now.
What's one more potent?
Shine down! Odds revealed by... Ring Cutter! Red outlines your fate!
As you can see, Lion's Roar significantly increases Xingqiu's Rain Sword damage. The number went from 5500 all the way up to 7500, which is a whopping 36% increase in damage. And this is done with him equipping Emblem of Severed Fate set, meaning Sacrificial Sword's 61.3% energy recharge is converted into 15.3% elemental burst damage bonus. If you are using 2-piece Noblesse and 2-piece Heart of Depth, Lion's Roar will win out even harder. Still not convinced? We can amplify Xingqiu's damage even further with some buffs. Let's put him in a team and test it out in the Spiral Abyss. I'll be selecting increased max health here, so it doesn't affect Xingqiu's actual damage numbers.
Solidify!
Witness the power of Guhua! Know my sword! Observe contest!
Did you catch that? No? Well, let's watch it again. Your eyes are not deceiving you. Those rain swords actually hit for over 11,000 damage. If I had Kazuha plus more Spiral Abyss buff cards, it is likely the damage can go as high as 14,000 per sword. Now you are convinced that this build is legit, let's move on to how we can make this also work for you. In order to effectively utilize Lion's Roar's passive, you are going to need one of these 4 characters to accompany him. This is because Electrocharged is the only reaction in the entire game that allows 2 elements to coexist on an enemy at the same time, meaning the weapon passive will always be up regardless whether Hydro or Electro is getting applied first during the combat. Xingqiu is known to have energy issues on his burst, so for artifact set, Emblem of Severed Fate is your only choice. This is because the 2-piece bonus already gives you 20% energy recharge, meaning you just have to find another 30% on the artifact substats. The recommended energy recharge for this build is minimum 150%, this allows you to comfortably get your burst back up right off cooldown. The value applies even if you have Constellation 6. With that said, crit is still extremely important and should not be ignored. For artifact main stats, it should be attack percentage, hydro damage bonus and either crit rate or crit damage depending on whichever one gives you a better 1:2 ratio. For substats, you are looking to hit a minimum 150 energy recharge and then you can consider other offensive stats. For example, crit or attack percentage. As you can see from my build, I have better feather and sands pieces, but I am not using them because the feather gives 10.4% energy recharge and my sands have a lot of crit rate which is used to balance out the crit ratio since I am using a crit damage circlet. You may ask why don't I just use a crit rate piece then? That's because this circlet gives me a whopping 16.2% energy recharge which is essential in hitting the 150 mark. It is worth noting that this is a specialized build and you won't be able to plug and play in any random team compositions. If you are lucky like me who has Raiden Shogun, congratulations, even against single target boss enemies, you should be able to get your burst off cooldown as long as you have 150 energy recharge. But if you do not have her, then you are gonna have to be more selective when deciding where to deploy this build. When there is a lot of enemy kills, the particle dropped from them can help you tremendously, and if you have someone on the team who runs a Favonius weapon, it can also offer you the extra edge to get your burst back up. If you are still not sure where this build will be good for when Raiden Shogun is absent, I'll just list out a few examples: all the chambers on floor 9, chamber 1 and 2 on floor 10 and chamber 2 on floor 11. All these chambers have one thing in common, and that is they contain a lot of small enemies, so even without Raiden Shogun, you should be able to get your burst back up with just the particles dropped from the kills. This build is also really good if you have the damage to one-cycle the enemy. Against bosses, it offers amazing single target damage that most of the time, you won't even be needing a second cast of your rain swords. Last but not the least, don't forget only the weapon. Lion's Roar is the restrictive factor here. If you ever have issue with energy recharge, simply switch back to Sacrificial Sword. Emblem of Severed Fate is still the best in slot set for Xingqiu and you won't be needing to do any additional farming. I hope this build guide helped you accelerate your Xingqiu to a new height. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments section and I shall answer. Happy Lantern Rite and see you in the next video.